Hello everyone, future graphics gurus. Welcome to a new semester. My name's Chris Traley. I'll be teaching graphics this fall, which I'm super stoked about. It's definitely not how I envisioned this round of graphics going, and it's not ideal, but this is my favorite class to teach, and I think we're still going to have a lot of fun, and we'll talk about how to build community in this class and still have a good time. So before I launch into telling you what the course is about, let me just tell you a few things about myself, just to kind of get us a little more casual start. So I actually grew up around here in Montgomery County. I went to Upper Dublin High School, which I know at least one person in this class who went there and had my same computer science teacher. So we were lucky enough to actually have CS in high school. But I graduated 2007, so a little minute ago. And then I went to Princeton for my undergrad. I majored in electrical engineering and computer science. Graduated in 2011. Had a really good time. It was sad to leave. At that point, I moved straight on to grad school at Duke. It actually took me 6 years to finish my PhD. Actually, the main reason I went there is so that I could teach at a place like Ursinus. I always wanted to teach. I got a little more into research too, which I still do, but luckily I was able to get that degree. I met my future partner there, and we actually got married at the Baltimore Zoo. So we had met in the Duke Symphony Orchestra also, so we ended up playing at our wedding a duet for like 10 minutes of popular music, popular score arrangements from movies, so that was fun. And central to our lives are our pets, our lovely fur babies, as we call them. We just moved to Philadelphia with them in East Falls, and we just got a dog too, Theo, in the upper right. But Layla's been with us from the start, so our kitty cat Layla. And here's Mr. Darcy. Unfortunately, he passed away right before the pandemic, so that was really sad. But he's still with us in spirit. Okay. But anyhow, so let's talk, now that I've talked about me for a minute, let's actually talk about what the heck you're going to be doing in this class. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with what I call geometric primitives. So before we get into graphics, we need some time to kind of get up on our math fundamentals. But we're actually going to be doing this in the context of coding and JavaScript, so I think it'll be a little more fun, a little bit less dry than most math. And I know that linear algebra is listed as a prerequisite or a co-requisite, but I honestly don't care. That's just sort of what I inherited coming here. This is my second year teaching this, and I think the majority of the students who took it last year didn't have any linear algebra background. I'll teach you everything you need, so it's going to be a little linear algebra, it's going to be a little bit of analytic geometry and how they fit together. So we'll spend the first 2 or 3 weeks on that and learning JavaScript as we go. And after we're finished that, we will move on to our first graphicsy thing, which is 3D scene generation. So we're going to figure out how to tell the computer how to organize a hierarchy of geometry in a virtual world. So I actually ran an assignment like this the first time I ever taught back at Duke when I was a grad student. And it was, a very early version of this assignment, and the students, using just like triangles, pretty much, were able to make this pyramid of Giza scene. I was impressed with that. I've souped it up a little bit. So last year, I got some pretty cool submissions. So this one was from Tom Mees. And actually now, so I have these, for graphics assignments that involve creativity, I have an art contest for each one, and you can get extra credit. So Tom got some extra credit on this one for the scene that he made. Another extra credit winner was Alex Hladku. He made this super creepy scene. He actually took these human body models that I'd provided, which were actually used in machine learning to try to learn, poses of humans in different shapes. And he used them in this really weird way. It gave them different color corresponding to the side of the Rubik's Cube they were standing on. And it's a little hard to see here, but he he used kind of a shortcoming of the engine that we were using to create this sparkling effect, something called Z-fighting, which we'll talk about later. So I was very impressed with that. And then another winner, of course, is somebody, Parker Fairchild, who used my head on a Pokemon trainer. So you see in this course I try to be as narcissistic as I possibly can, so I give you a 3D model of my head, which you can use in any way that you want, pretty much. So we got a couple art contest submissions involving me in various scenarios. Also one with the penguin. But I'll leave it up to you how you want to incorporate that, or if you want to incorporate that. Okay, so we start off with that. That was super cool. Then we moved on to rendering. Actually, in a lot of cases, undergrad graphics is just rendering. But for us, it'll be, I guess, maybe about a little less than half the course. But so basically what rendering is we're going to figure out how do humans see light, and can we then get computers to pretend that they're seeing light and create an image from a virtual world, almost as if they were some kind of camera or eye. And so we'll reverse engineer the process of vision. And the main thing we're going to work on programming-wise in an assignment is this ray tracing paradigm. So here's an example of a ray tracer that was released from NVIDIA. And here is my first ray tracer when I was an undergrad and I took graphics. So last year was my 10-year anniversary of having a ray tracer. I got to tell my students that. Actually, so the image on the right took probably about 6 or 7 minutes to generate. But one of the things that we're going to do in this course, which we also did last year, which is a lot of fun, is make this real time. So it's actually going to be interactive. And so here's what this looks like. Here's a working version of the assignment that you're going to do. You can see there's like this curved mirror that I'm looking in there. And I can change material properties. I can make them more or less reflective. You know, light bounces all off of this kind of mirror box. I can change the colors of the lights. There's some kind of spotlight here. There's a big mirror. It's all sorts of stuff going on. And this is me interacting with it real time. So you'll get to do that. Now, this is definitely the hardest assignment in the course, and we're going to take at least a month to work through it. But it's also just incredibly fun and amazing when you get it to work. So that's that. We will talk about a different kind of rendering pipeline called the object first rendering pipeline for a little while. But so some classes would focus entirely on this. I actually want you to focus more on ray tracing in your assignment, because ray tracing is sort of the future of rendering. This is a more traditional pipeline that works at interactive rates, but it makes some sacrifice in image quality. We'll do bits and pieces of it in class, and I'll have a couple of things on a midterm. I hate exams, so it's just going to be some kind of assignment that's individual. But yeah, so you do little bits and pieces of this, but we're really going to focus on this ray tracer together for the rendering unit. And that'll be plenty, trust me. But yeah, so you know, some interesting things we can do with real-time rendering. We'll talk about using something called WEBGL, which is you'll be coding C++. You'll do this in a ray tracer too, but you'll actually be using your GPU. You'll be coding on the GPU, the graphics processing unit, which is a chip that you have in your computer that's responsible just for rendering. And so it'll be cool to interact with that and to see how much faster things. This is the reason it's real time, is because we're doing things on this special hardware that you'll learn how to interact with. And I'll mention briefly some more advanced stuff that's more graduate topics. You won't do it, but I'll just say how do we actually get towards making sort of Pixar quality things? Because the stuff I teach you to do yourself is mainly sort of 80s technology, but it's still pretty interesting. And yeah, I'll teach you a couple of things that, you know, so far I've talked about trying to get the most realistic things we can, but also you may want to intentionally do something that's a little more like a cartoon. So we'll talk about something called cell shading, and we'll do an exercise on that. Just to give you an example, here is somebody who won the art contest last year, so Parker. This happened around Halloween, so he made a nice little Halloween cartoon. He found a pumpkin 3D model online, got these little candy models, put it all together, and there you have it. Here's another student, Zeb, who made this interesting cartoon little scene. You can see a dinosaur, a little teapot. You can see my head there. So we have that. Okay, then we're going to move on to 3D shape representations. So we're going to talk about how do you represent surfaces that have different shapes in a computer. And this is where you'll kind of reach back to some stuff that you may have been doing in 174 with linked lists and all that. It's going to be like linked lists on steroids. So we're going to talk about these data structures that are really nice for traversing surfaces and walking along surfaces and modifying surfaces. So one of the things you can do, which I'm sure you're very excited to do, is inflate a bunny. You can also make these surfaces of revolution here. This is like if I was making pottery. And there I am again, okay? We'll also get a chance to talk about topology a little bit, which is a subject that I actually research a little bit, and Dr. Scoville researches a lot. So it's sort of what can you say about these surfaces without talking about their exact coordinates, which is what we've been talking to up until this point, but something a little more about their connectivity, things like how many holes do they have. So, for example, or how many handles do they have really? So, for example, this teapot actually has the same number of handles as this donut, which is interesting. So we say that has genus 1. And actually, Homer Simpson, an octopus, and a sphere have no handles that I can sort of actually enclose in a loop my hand over. Unless he pierced his ear, I guess. Then he would have one. Full disclosure, I actually did that back in college, right after I took graphics, and I was like, oh, my genus changed. That's how nerdy I was. Anyway, and then this one has 3 holes. Okay. Cool, so we'll do graphics. Actually, students really liked this, and they were so excited about it that some of them almost decided, even just CS people decided to take topology with Dr. Scoville. And I think that's a cool outcome. I think in general in this class, you're going to see that math is maybe more useful or fun and approachable than you realized. That's one of my goals. And this is my MO. This is why I'm here in a math CS department. I love combining math with other things and making math sort of more intuitive. So students really liked that last year. Oh yeah, and another part of topology is just boundary detection. How do you find holes? Not the handles, but also different kind of hole. And this is important because you might end up like, you can see my hair here up top. There's like a crack in it, and I need to fill it in. And somehow this dinosaur model that I provided to the class, I didn't realize until I made this assignment last year, but for some reason all of its fingertips got cut off and so did its toes, so that's a little weird. So I'll be providing you a ton of these models to mess around with as you write code to like detect holes and figure out what the genus is and inflate things, whatever. So we'll do all that sort of stuff. That's another big assignment. That's the second biggest assignment after the ray tracing. And we'll talk about, and we'll do some class exercises on other 3D shape representations other than just all these triangles glued together. Some volumetric representations, so you can do cool things like make blobby things, raindrops. You can even put enough raindrops together, you can make Spock. That's what this paper showed. Anyway, so we'll talk about that. Okay, and then we're going to move on to animation in the last leg of the course. So one of the things that I'm really going to harp on is how do we represent rotations in 3D, and how do we actually rotate an object from one orientation to another. And the math here turns out to be completely crazy, and I'm going to blow your mind, and it's going to be awesome. Okay. It's something I've been trying to understand since I was in high school, since I first started messing around with graphics, and I was like, rotations are so confusing. And then finally, by the time I got to grad school, I figured it out. So I'll get you to figure it out a little sooner. I have these exercises that'll explain it. We'll also talk about something called forward kinematics, which is how do you kind of animate these rigid bodies from one frame to the next that have joints and things that are connected to each other. It's actually quite related to the scenes, the virtual worlds, except the virtual world is just like a person. But still, it's interesting because now it's dynamic. It's actually changing over time. We're also going to talk about something called inverse kinematics, which is how do you get sort of like a robot arm to reach a target. And it turns out there's an algorithm to do this that's incredibly simple. I could almost give it to you in like the first or second week of the course. but we'll wait until this. It'll be a little treat in the end. It'll be nice and easy. And then you can make this animation for somebody to try to get a piece of cake. Okay. I found this on Twitter when I was looking for the algorithm that does this. So people do some interesting things with this algorithm. But yeah, it's super useful because if you want to try to say, hey, I want this person to be in this, pose, then I can just click a few points and then their whole arm will kind of move in the right way to accommodate that pose. But then also, that's just for the skeleton. You also need to move the skin. So we're going to talk about something called skinning. How do you move the skin along with the skeleton? And hopefully, we didn't do this last year, but hopefully there'll be a little class exercise where I actually show you how to implement this on the GPU. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is the dynamics of motion. So we're going to do a little bit of mechanics in the class. Talk about how do you deal with some physics, things bouncing into each other. And you'll get to make a green cow falling from the sky in the midst of a bunch of balls. Super useful stuff, right? But this is the sort of stuff that you would need for any movie you're making or video game that wants to look realistic with physics. So we'll talk about some of the basics of that. Okay, so one of the things that I'm really bummed out about, I'll just be honest, about being remote, is that I think it'll be a little harder to build a community, but I'm going to try my darnest to do it. So, like I said, this course is hard, but it's super fun, and I try to provide as much help as I can. Students were in my office like 24/7 last year. Like literally, I was in my office until like 11 with some students. I'll try to meet with you on Teams when you need it. For my own sanity, I may not be able to meet at 11 as much as I used to, but we'll see. But definitely, I'm going to have a lot of office hours, so make sure you fill out that survey. The other thing is the ray tracer is a particularly difficult assignment, and so I usually like to hold a hackathon for that, where we all get together and have pizza. And here's some pictures from the hackathon last year. So it's like an 8-hour thing. I'm like, okay, everybody, just come in and tell me what you're stuck on, and we'll work it out, and people can work with each other. I'd like to do that again this year. I don't think it's the best idea to have pizza that we kind of pass around in person during a global pandemic. But maybe what we'll do, so I'll definitely be online for like 8 hours, and I'm thinking of having like pizza delivery or something to different people who, maybe help each other or sort of reach their milestones that they were struggling with. We'll deliver some pizza or something like that. But yeah, I really want to get to know everybody. From those of you who I know, I'm really excited to have you, and those of you who I don't know, I've heard really good things. So we're really lucky to have like an awesome class this fall. And so I want you guys to get to know each other. I want you to get to know me. I want you to have fun. I really hope this is fun. It's gonna stretch you, but we'll get through it together. So anyway, take it easy. You're gonna see on the next page, it's an opportunity for you to fill that survey again and to fill out your office hours availability if you haven't done so already. And then I'll have a little JavaScript module for you to do. So take care. I'm looking forward to get to know you all better, and we'll talk soon. Peace.